Las Vegas Raiders fans, it is time to trust the champs. Tom Brady, minority owner, you went and hired Pete Carroll. But I want to talk about how do we get here? And what do I mean by that? The Las Vegas Raiders haven't won the division since 2002, 2003.
It's a tough
they haven't
scene,
had
Keith.
a winning record above 500 since the 2016-2017 season, somewhere in there. So let's talk about this. How did the Las Vegas Raiders get here? Such a historic franchise.
Yeah, you brought up trusting the champs, right?
Yep.
They trusted a champ, but a champ from a long time ago, and that's John Gruden.
Yeah.
And that was somebody who had been out the game, working at ESPN, doing Gruden's camps, doing his breakdowns, and Mike Mayock, somebody who was not somebody who had that background, right? Had played football, but had been working at NFL Network, and they were given total control to come in and really make this something, right? With Derek Carr, and you think about the move to Las Vegas and how big of a deal this was supposed to be. Wow, it did not turn out the way that it was supposed to, or even close to that. And largely, this was the outside noise about John Gruden at the time was so loud about how great he was going to be. And I got to give a shout out to our boy Jamie Eisner, because Jamie Eisner always said he won a Super Bowl, but he won a Super Bowl with Tony Dungy's players.
Yep, 100%.
And
that matters.
That matters big time. And I'm not saying John Gruden's not a good coach, but I don't think, especially the amount of time he spent away from the game and then coming back to the game at the time in which he was brought in with a inexperienced general manager in Mike Mayock, who had only had experience talking about it, right, in media, wasn't the right fit. And they were given total control. You think now the flip side of that, Pete Carroll and Tom Brady?
Right, totally different.
This is a different ball game, Keith. Now this is the type of shit we're talking about on the Draft Club Raiders. Like, this is what we like to see. But the how you got here, it's important to remember how much control was given to both John Gruden and Mike Mayock.
Yeah, and it's not just those two, right? But I'm going to start with John Gruden and Mike Mayock in the resume, right?
Yeah.
And first of all, Mike Mayock was on NFL Network and then hadn't had much experience to little to no experience in the NFL. He was cool with, right? Obviously, John Gruden, they both worked in media together, and John Gruden worked there post, him being a coach and things like that. And so you kind of see that Mark Davis trusts the wrong people, right?
Correct.
It's like if you're his parent, you're like, you know what? You got to pick better friends at the end of the day, right? Stop trusting everybody, because after he trusted John Gruden, you know who he went and trusted after that? He went and trusted Josh McDaniels, right?
Not
Who's
a good
proven
fit.
to you that I'm an untrustworthy person, to be honest.
Yeah.
'Cause remember the whole debacle with the Indianapolis Colts where he took the job and then left and went back to the Patriots, and then remember the Broncos situation where there was bad quarterbacks there and he almost tanked that team. So he's proven to you that I'm not a trustworthy person as a head coach, maybe an offensive coordinator, maybe doing the Patriot way, but not being a head coach. So they had back-to-back years where they selected the wrong head coach, selected wrong general managers, and Mark Davis. I want to talk about this real quick, because him and Jerry Jones were more Al Davis but transitioning to Mark Davis. They're celebrity owners, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But they have totally different approaches.
Yeah, for sure.
Jerry Jones wants to be hands-on and everything for his $1 billion playpen.
Yeah.
Mark Davis is kind of like, I like you, I'm going to hire you, here's my entire house.
100%.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And he might be a guy that needs to pay attention a little bit more, but I think they finally in the right direction.
Yeah, I think they're finally in the right direction. And the Josh McDaniels thing, I fault him, but I fault him more for falling into the trap that we've seen others fall into. You think the Lions, before they got this right, they got it really wrong with Matt Patricia.
Right.
And this was we want to recreate the Bill Belichick situation. And a lot of organizations learned this the very hard way. Yeah. And I think that's where I was very critical of that at the time was, one, I cannot believe that Josh McDaniels got that opportunity after what he pulled with Indianapolis. Because quite frankly, it was wrong.
And the Broncos was not good. And I think that's why I have to hold Mark Davis accountable. It's one of those things, and it's the prime example of when somebody shows you who they are,
you gotta watch.
Believe them,
Yeah,
right? You have to 100% believe them. And he showed you that he didn't change, and there wasn't a whole lot he learned from the Broncos situation because he left Indianapolis Colts hanging after the Broncos situation.
Correct.
So I want to look, you just look at it from that perspective. But let's talk about the brighter days, right? And we have obviously Tom Brady, minority owner, right? The GOAT, the greatest quarterback of all time, and they're making decisions. Then you hire Pete Carroll, right? I think he's going into the season the oldest head coach in the NFL and one of the oldest head coaches to stand on the sideline.
Yep.
But one word. Energy, right?
For sure.
High energy. You've seen it in the press conference.
For sure.
Pete is still ready to get after it. What do Raiders fans need to look forward to with Pete Carroll being in the building?
Man, you should, if you haven't, you should go back and watch his entire press conference from the NFL Combine. And we can speak to this because we were, 2 feet away from him.
We were right there.
We were right there. But I can tell you, I very rarely take away anything from any press conference because usually you get a lot of BS from head coaches. You get a lot of coach talk. Mm-hmm. You get a lot of just noise and talking in circles. Pete Carroll is so intentional and thoughtful in how he talks, and he's so he elaborates and brings you in and connects the dots on so many aspects of football. And he even was so in depth in the detail of talking about how when he went to Seattle, the environment that they created, and I've been there with the 12s, and I've told you it's the only environment that feels like college in the NFL is Seattle. And he was talking about how the Raiders used to have the black hole, right? And the black hole was an unmatched thing in the NFL.
Yep.
And I think if you're a real Raider fan, that really resonated because they've lost the identity and the core of what this team was, with the Al Davis team. They were gritty and they fought back and they didn't listen to the commissioner and he was always fighting somebody. And then they became this bougie Vegas team and it didn't fit them. And I think that's where Pete came back in and said, listen, we need to make Vegas a home environment again. Like when people come to play the Raiders, they need to go, fuck, we're playing the Raiders. Yeah. And Tom Brady loves that. And Pete did it in Seattle. And Seattle was not the environment or the intimidating market that it is now before Pete got there. And I think that's the part for Vegas fans. If you're a Raiders fan, and I don't want to say Vegas fans, I want to say Raiders fans on purpose because Raiders fans are not Vegas fans.
Yeah.
Okay? And they need to get back to 8 commitments a year where you're coming in from Oakland and LA, and Pete talking about buses and getting the real true core fans there because, man, before this, if you were a Chiefs fan or a Chargers fan or a Broncos fan, you didn't go to Oakland. You didn't even dare step foot in that bitch.
You didn't worry about it.
Because you knew when we go in there, we're probably going to get into a fight. We're not trying to mess around because Raiders fans are serious. And they do not, and that needs to come back because it's part of the core and the identity of who this football team is. And I think listening to Pete Carroll, if you haven't listened to it, you should go back and listen to it because I think even as a non-Raider fan, I left that going, fucking right, Pete. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, it feels like the Raiders. That's what we're looking for, baby. We want that old version of the Raiders back, and that's who you need to be. And you got Max Crosby, your star, as the face of that, and he's perfect for it.
Yep, 100%. I'll go with this. Compete. If you listen to a Pete Carroll conference, interview, whatever it may be, there's not one he will do without saying the word compete or competition, right? Yep. And so you have to do that because you want to weed out the guys. And the good head coaches, right, they never rest on their laurels. They're always trying to get better. They're always pushing their players to get better. They're always doing things to find ways to remotivate these guys because they understand that it's football. And once you have success, it's really easy to kind of rest on your laurels. And so I look at what they've done, right, and that's the culture part of this. And like you said, just extending Max Crosby, which is huge, right? But bringing in Geno Smith, a guy that I'm familiar with, a guy that, what was his phrase? They wrote me off, but I didn't write back. Right? You want that type of grittiness in your locker room. You want somebody that's an Oakland Raider.
That's what I mean. Say that, right?
That's an Oakland Raider. Somebody that, you know what? I have a chip on my shoulder and I have a problem. You look at Max Crosby. He's been through things, right? The drug addiction is well documented. Heavily tatted up guy, but he speaks on it. And he speaks on the fact of he wears that with pride, right? That I used to be this and now I'm this. Yeah. And that's what the Raiders were, right? Everything is not perfect. We rugged, we gonna get after it.
100%.
And then you look at having a guy like Brock Bowers, right? Playing the tight end position and what he's able to do and breaking records as a rookie, right?
Should have been a rookie of the year, Brock Bowers.
No good quarterbacks.
Literally. The statistics, what Brock Bowers did as a rookie with the lack of consistent quarterback play was insane.
Yep.
You got you got some dogs. You got some dogs, and that's what the Raiders are. That's who they are. Their identity needs to look like Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
But and be in Vegas.
Yeah, no,
that's what they need.
That's exactly what it has. And they have to find a way. I think the problem is that they moved at a bad time too, meaning that there wasn't good either, right? So everybody wasn't bought in. So not only those stadium seats empty because you're in Vegas and not in Oakland, but they're empty because you're not good, right? So people don't even want to put in the effort to come see a good team, well, to come see a bad team because they want to see good football. So I think it's a combination of both.
They also, if we're talking about how we got here before we transition, you have to talk about the Derek Carr situation, right? And how they handled that, because that was mismanaged. And Derek Carr was the Raiders. He was the Raiders.
Yeah.
And the Oakland Raiders, pre-back injury Derek Carr, man, he was good. Before he took that injury in Oakland, he was a different quarterback, and he had a serious back injury, and he was never the same. But Derek was good enough, right? And they brought Devontae Adams in on a promise, and then the next season,
Josh McDaniels,
they moved off of him and brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, and you're like Devontae was sitting there, and you watch that receiver docuseries, and you're like, yeah, Devontae, I feel you, dog. Yeah. Like, this is some bullshit. Yeah. Like, they did you wrong. Because that was like, I'm moving here, I'm coming here to play with my college quarterback. They both played at Fresno together. Like, this was going to be a good situation, and you just, again, you didn't handle it right. It wasn't, that whole situation never sat well with me. How they handled Derek, how they sat him down to then move off of him for Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, was not, it's like, come on, guys. If you're going to move away from your franchise guy, you sure as shit better bring in Caleb Williams. You better be drafting your future star, right? And they weren't.
And I think that's why it ties it back into where we started with Mark Davis and just trusting too much, right?
Correct.
That you've been in the building with Derek Carr. I'm talking about Mark Davis.
Yeah.
You know the type of quarterback he was. You know that he brought you to playoffs before. And so you don't let one guy come here and tell you that this guy has been a proven commodity in the NFL, is no longer good in the NFL.
No.
When, hold on, you're not a proven commodity as a head coach, right?
Literally. So, and the only reason you like Jimmy Garoppolo is because you fell in love with what you thought you could have behind Tom Brady forever ago. Yep. Not what you actually saw. Yep. Not what you actually saw, because you never really saw him in your system. Yeah. You saw him have success in the system we see everybody have success in, the Shanahan system. Shocking. Yep. Shocking that didn't work out for you guys.
100%. We talked about them extending Max Crosby, signing Geno Smith, and extending them. But obviously we know their team needs, right? They have to improve some team needs. So I went through it, right? Looked at their
we
roster,
got a little 3-round mock.
Yeah. In Draft Club, like I said, we're always solution-based, right?
Yeah,
we
got to
provide solutions. So went through a couple roster situations, team needs they have. Offensive side of the football, they need playmakers. You need a wide receiver. You need a bell cow running back. You need a right tackle, right?
Yep.
And then I look at the defense side of the football. They need a cornerback. They need a linebacker. And so the 3-round mock, I went with this. First, I went with Mason Graham.
I saw this.
That's
God, it fits Raiders.
Best player available. He's rugged. He's gritty. He gets after it. And
Max Crosby and Mason Graham? Are you freaking kidding me? Oh, my God.
And Christian Wilkins.
So the sauce level is stupid. That has to be the two swaggiest white boys in the NFL if you got Max Crosby and Mason Graham. Stupid.
You getting after it. So you have those two guys. You have Christian Wilkins and Mason Graham at the interior defensive line position, and then Max Crosby on the edge. You have one of the best front defensive lines in the entire NFL immediately,
and
week one.
And by the way, I'm going to talk to Raiders fans here real quickly. Did you guys watch that Super Bowl? Did you see how to beat Patrick Mahomes? That recipe sounds pretty nice to me.
Yeah, that's what you need. You need a good defensive line.
That's what you need.
Second round, I said running back was a team need. Go with Quinshon Judkins, right? Take him early in the second round if you could get your hands on him. Now you have a true bell cow running back.
Big boy.
He may give you some resemblance, maybe Pete Carroll, some resemblance of a little beast mode, a little Marshawn Lynch toting the rock in between the tackles, but you start to build identity and you have offensive balance, right? Geno Smith is going to throw the football, you know that. But he could turn around and hand the football. Also, Pete Carroll, when he first got to Seattle, what was that? That was Russell Wilson and then running the football with Marshawn Lynch and playing really good defense.
Sounds like a little Seattle 2.0, baby.
Then I wrapped it up with this. I went with Emory Jones, the offensive tackle from LSU. I told you they needed a right tackle.
Yep.
Emory kind of is going to probably slip a little bit in the draft just because of his play, but the upside was a first-round guy. But this is why I think he goes good. He's not a Las Vegas Raider. He's an Oakland Raider.
I love that.
Emory Jones is a kick-ass person. I'll tell you this. I want him in a bar fight. I want him on my football team.
Ooh,
he's
like
going to find a way. He's a guy that's going to – he pushed the threshold of playing to the whistle and playing after the whistle.
That's what I love for my offensive lineman.
Yeah, and that's what you want. He wants to finish guys. His mentality, he's out there with the David Goggins say, he's snatching souls, right? And that's what you want.
I love that.
And that's what you want across the offensive line.
And you need at least you need a tone setter on your offensive line, right? You got to have one dude who's a little crazy. Minimum one guy.
Somebody that doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like, hey, you know
shout out to the OG Alex Boone. He's the epitome of this, right?
100%.
You gonna go way past the whistle, but the guys across from you are gonna think twice.
Yeah, you
before doing that shit again.
You want. Defensively and on the offensive line, you want once those guys leave your building, you just hoping that they make it back the next day.
That's amazing.
That's what you want. Like,
end quote.
Yeah.
I love that one.
But let's give out this draft grade.
Okay.
And not draft grade, just off-season grade.
Yeah, the
overall.
off-season grade.
Yeah,
here.
just thus far heading into the
grade.
draft. And looking at it, and I think we both decided we have to give them an A+.
Yeah.
Right? You bring in championship pedigree into the building, you deserve an A+.
Pete Carroll was our number one coaching candidate. When we were looking at this.
Yeah, you wanted him for the Bears.
I really did. I really did want him for Chicago, and I'm really happy with how things settled there. And I'm happy. I'm happy he ended up in Las Vegas because I think the West Coast
need to be good,
and the West Coast needs Petey.
Yeah,
the West Coast needs Petey, and Pete needed to go somewhere where he could really kind of bring in a total culture change. And I think this is where they really need him. They needed him. And I'm excited for him. I'm excited for Raiders fans because, man, that's a franchise that when they're not good, it's not good for the NFL, quite frankly. Yeah. And they need that identity back. And Pete Carroll is that dude. And anytime Tom Brady is associated with anything, you could just put a check mark next to that shit. Just know instantaneously, I will never forget the conversation that I had with Bruce Arians when Tom Brady started there in Tampa. Mm-hmm. And he called me after the first practice, and he told me, P, I can't make this shit up. Everybody, including the damn secretaries, are on their P's and Q's. And I started laughing. And it's because that's the aura of greatness that man brings. Yep. Because he shows up early. It's like Kobe Bryant. It's like MJ. Show up early. They're the last. James. Nope, I didn't say LeBron James. The last one to leave. The toughest competitor out there on the field. And everybody knows that if they don't bring their A game, they're going to cuss their ass out. And that includes the secretary.
100%. And that's what we're trying to get to. The Las Vegas Raiders back. Rebels with a cause, right? And there I love that. Have it, Las Vegas Raiders fan. We just fixed y'all franchise. Yeah. Y'all are on your way up there. Like we said, listen to the champs. This is Keith Sanchez. That's Paige Dimakos. This is Draft Club. Players only.